story begins in a small town called Nazareth. When we pick it up, Joseph and Mary are now married. Most have assumed that Joseph is the biological father of the child within Mary. Only Joseph and Mary know for sure because Joseph has not taken the time to defend himself, didn't feel the need to do so. I'm sure there were a lot of good reasons that God chose Joseph to be the earthly model, an example for his heavenly son. Joseph loved Mary. He believed Mary. He believed in Mary. Joseph would protect Mary, even at the cost of his own reputation. And as read earlier, Caesar Augustus issues this decree that every male must return to their ancestral home where they would be counted and taxed. Now, the distance from Bethlehem to Nazareth, or Nazareth to Bethlehem, is approximately 70 miles, I guess, as the crow flies. But that would be straight through Samaria, and the terrain is hilly. The reception going through Samaria wouldn't be real great. It'd be hard to find lodging there in Samaria at night. And so they probably took another route, and in doing so, traveled 80, 100 miles, which would have taken 4, 7 days, who knows. Joseph had no choice to go. He had to go. But Mary did. Why did Mary go? Was she so near her due date she didn't want to deliver the child without Joseph by her side? Were both Joseph and Mary aware of the prophecy that Messiah would be born in Bethlehem? And so that's why they went. I don't know. I remember very vividly those times riding in a car, when you're not feeling well and it's just like, this is miserable, whether it was, a kidney stone or after a knee surgery or... We've all been in that situation. It's like, man, is this thing ever going to get over? I can't imagine what pain and inconvenience and discomfort Mary experienced on this trip. And when they arrived in Bethlehem, what did they find? Holiday Inn, baby. Hot bath. Comfortable bed. No. With the census in town, Mary and Joseph found no vacancy everywhere they turned. So now I wonder how Mary is feeling. I wonder if we can sense the desperation in Joseph's voice as he hears no time and time again. Sadly, that kind of rejection would be commonplace for Jesus. 700 years before the time of Christ, Isaiah predicted that Messiah would be despised and rejected by men. As an adult, Jesus was nearly thrown off of a cliff near his hometown of Nazareth for daring to suggest that he was the Messiah. When he cast some demons out of some men in Matthew chapter 8 and sent those demons into a herd of pigs, all the pigs jumped off this steep cliff. And when the townspeople heard about it, they begged Jesus to leave the area because he was bad for the local economy. When Pilate gave the Jews an opportunity to choose between Barabbas, a well-known criminal, and Jesus, they chose Barabbas instead of Jesus. While Jesus ministered, he had no permanent place that he could call his home. The Apostle John would write, Jesus came unto his own, and his own received him not. Even the Jewish people had no room for Jesus in their lives. But that was then, right? Today is different, right? Today, the politically correct would have us say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. Many stores ban the Salvation Army from collecting funds and distributing funds in Jesus' name. Higher education has no problem making room for discussion about Karl Marx or Muhammad, but no room for Jesus Christ. Christian organizations are increasingly feeling the pressure to adapt their beliefs to the world's beliefs or be silenced. Easter break is now called spring break. Christmas break is now called winter break. Many people no longer think they need Jesus today. With our modern technology, kind of assume we have all we need, don't we? The Barna Research Group conducted a poll for the Lutheran Hour Ministries, and in this poll, 88% of those who were surveyed identified themselves as Christians, and yet only 37% of the adults in this national survey said that Jesus Christ is the most important part of Christmas. 44% said family time is the most important part of Christmas. The sin of indifference is pointed out by the quote from Larry Crabb, who said, and I quote, "The core problem is not that the world is too passionate about bad things, but that we are not passionate enough about good things." A young boy was supposed to play the part of the innkeeper in the church's Christmas pageant. Every time at rehearsal, when it was his time to say, tell Joseph and Mary there was no room for them in the inn, he just couldn't bring himself to say the lines. Every time at rehearsal. And when he was finally pressed enough and asked why, the boy finally blurted out, "I just can't send Jesus away, man. He can have my room." Zig Ziglar tells the story about his brother who was traveling, and he came to a hotel that was fully booked. Ziglar's brother said, "Now come on, be honest with me. If the President of the United States walked through that door right now and requested a room, would you have some place for him to stay?" Manager said, "Well, if the President of the United States walked through that door, yes, I think we could find a room for him to stay in." Zig Ziglar's brother said, "That's great, because I know for a fact the President isn't going to come here and stay tonight, so I'll have his room if you don't mind." I'm going to suspect that innkeeper in Bethlehem had turned away many people before Joseph and Mary ever came to his door. I don't think he was the cold, heartless individual he is often portrayed as. The fact is, the innkeeper took a look at Mary's condition, and he found a place for her to stay. There was something about Joseph's pleas. Guys, put yourself in Joseph's place. Please. There was something about Mary's condition that got through to the innkeeper, and he found a stall in which some have suggested was a hole in a Bethlehem hillside, and he did the best that he could. I wonder how Joseph felt when he had to break the news to Mary and tell her what he found. I wonder if he felt like he was letting Mary down. I wonder if Joseph felt like he was letting God down. "I'm sorry, God. It's the best I can do." I can see Joseph. He's pulling the old smelly hay out of that cattle trough, and he's replacing it with some fresh hay, but Mary's husband soon became Mary's midwife. And the stillness of the night is interrupted by Mary's screams as her labor pains increased. And when Jesus was born of Mary, no one knew the birth was necessary so that you and I could be born again. No one knew the wonder of the surroundings. That baby left in heaven for the poverty of our existence here on earth, so that in exchange we could go enjoy the wonder of those surroundings in heaven. Jesus willingly denied himself of all things so that we might one day freely receive all things. He was rejected by mankind so we might be accepted by God. The Son of God became the Son of Man so the sons and daughters of man might become the sons and daughters of God. It's good news. It's great news. It wasn't a hospital that Jesus would be born into, but a cave. Served as a barn for animals. Savior of the world shared his delivery room with cattle, sheep, donkeys. His birth wasn't witnessed by doctors and nurses and kings and dignitaries, but by those same lowly animals. Instead of finding warmth under a heat lamp, Jesus lay in the cool, crisp Judean night air in a feeding trough for cattle. Instead of being wrapped with preheated blankets like babies are today, Jesus was wrapped in strips of linen cloth lying nearby. This would hardly seem like the entrance for a king. But there was no room anywhere else. In the fall of 1775, the manager of Baltimore's largest hotel refused lodging to a man dressed as a farmer. The manager thought this guy's lowly appearance might discredit his inn, his motel. So he sent him packing. It wasn't much later, the manager was embarrassed when he discovered the man he had refused lodging for was none other than Thomas Jefferson, the first vice president of the United States of America. So the manager sent Thomas Jefferson a note inviting the vice president to return. Jefferson replied by instructing his messenger to say, "Tell him I have already engaged a room. I value his good intentions highly, but if he has no place for a dirty American farmer, then he has no place for the Vice President of the United States." When Jesus Christ came into this world, there was no room in the inn. And after 2,000 years, not a lot has changed. There are no vacancy signs posted on many hearts all around the world. We work right beside many of them, go to school with a lot of them. No vacancy in my life, no vacancy in my marriage, no vacancy in my family, no vacancy in my home, no vacancy in my business, no vacancy in many churches. And yet here's the good news. Jesus promised you and me we will receive a far different greeting when we get to heaven. Before he departed this world, he said, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God? Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If that weren't so, I wouldn't have told you there was. And because there is, I'm going to prepare a place there for you." Oh, wow. God of the universe has gone ahead of us to make sure that when we arrive in heaven, we are well received. Even though when he came to earth, he wasn't. There's a place waiting for us. John writes, he came unto his own to the Jewish people, but his own did not receive him. But to those who did receive him, to those who accepted him, he gave the right to become sons and daughters of the King, children born not from flesh, not by a human's desire, but children born by the will of God. That's you and me. We are the sons and the daughters of the great King. We've been promised a room in the King's house. Not just any room, but a room that's been specifically prepared for me and for you. The inn at Bethlehem was an image of God's invitation to Jesus then. It's still an image of God's invitation for you and I today. Is there room in your life for Jesus? I can't control what you decide. We can't control what our spouse will decide. We can't control what our kids will decide. What our brothers and sisters will decide. We can't control what our coworkers will decide. But I can control what I will decide. There's room in my heart for Jesus. And I pray tonight there's room in your heart for Jesus as well. And as we take his light from this place tonight, may we take the celebration of Christmas into our homes, into our family celebrations. May we be the ones who choose Jesus, and by doing so, impact the Christmas for all of those around us as well.